Hello, and welcome to the Six Forces Part 3, the Xarion Expanse. Once humanity had discovered the hyperdrive, it began to leave its infancy. Humans would go on to colonize their region of space with their military capital in a system called Rubicon, as well as planets in the Alpha Centauri system being colonized. Humanity would advance greatly, but for the time being, most colonies were locked inside. Without the ability to terraform planets, humans would need to rely on life support to survive in space. The Harvana Empire, the sole human government of the time, would find itself in a feudal system. That system, however, would be challenged by Prince Ralphus Harvana, who would be threatened by a peasant revolt on the planet Xarion 1A. The revolt would have claimed the prince's life, but a young mechanic was able to seal a series of events that protected him and the prince from the angry townsfolk. This was a revolutionary experience for the prince, who would go on to preach reform for the empire, trying to end the feudal system. He secretly funded a ship called Pella's Hope to try and leave the Xarion Expanse and report back. However, no one would see any of the sign of the ship for many generations. As a recap, an expanse is an area of space dominated by hyperspace disruption, which cannot be jumped through. The Xarion Expanse completely surrounds the Earth and surrounding systems, which isolated them for many generations. The prince would not see his dreams of democracy come to fruition, however, as he was assassinated by a group of Harvana loyalists at the age of 60. This was especially tragic as the Rejuvenate system, a system which would allow for extreme ages to be reached, had been invented and was expected to help prolong the prince's life for generations. To this day, there's speculation of help being given to the assassins, and many people believe that the killing was an inside job or was perpetrated by members of the Circle. The organization had not been founded yet, according to their own records. This era would mark the last time power armor was considered cutting edge, being replaced by personal shields. Some decades after the prince's death, a prominent businessman would rise to power through his mercantile dealings and his ruthless greed. Robert Melkai would bring the Melkai Corporation to nearly dominate the empire, rivaling the Empress herself in power. He would make a critical misstep, however, when he wiped out the settlers of Pyrrhic, a small mining colony. All the colonists were killed in Robert's raid to claim their planet, except one. A young boy named Alexander Kelov would leave his destroyed home with nothing but his father's hat and his tattered clothes. The boy would be taken to Rubicon Primus and abandoned on the streets. Here he would learn to steal to feed himself until he encountered a major in the Imperial Army. The major would take the boy under his wing, believing he had seen a fire in the boy's eyes. Alexander would serve the Empire loyally until he was sent to support the Melkai Corporation's plot to seize a border world rich in rare minerals. Alexander would have misgivings about the mission, and in carrying it out, loses his right arm. He is given an award for his battle wound, but becomes disillusioned with the military. He eventually fakes his own death in a shuttle accident and turns a renegade. With a new mechanical arm, he becomes a criminal and mercenary. His life's goals shift to killing the man who ordered his family killed, Robert Melkai. He will kill various people during his revenge plot and creep ever closer to his goal. However, his goal shifts slightly when he meets Anise, a young orphan who Alexander sees himself in. Together, they continue to hone in on Robert Melkai, which leads Alexander to learn his new charge's parentage. It turns out Anise is the abandoned daughter of Robert Melkai himself. This damages Alexander's relationship with Anise. Previously, Alexander saw himself as the father of the girl. Now he saw an invisible flaw in her. His inner conflict was resolved, however, when Robert Melkai, fleeing Alexander, opened a temporary gap in the Xarion Expanse where the Pella's Hope had left. Anise becomes pinned down, and Alexander must choose between his revenge and his daughter. He chooses his daughter, letting Melkai escape forever. The pair would eventually go and live off on a small outpost world where they opened a farm together and lived out the rest of their lives peacefully, having made plenty of profit off of their mercenary and bounty hunting jobs to live a lifetime. However, this marks the end of their story, but not the end of humanity's. Humanity would eventually notice a shift in the Expanse's hyperspace disruption fields. Perhaps it was caused by the repeated breaches created, or perhaps it was a natural phenomenon. Either way, humans could finally leave their corner of space. After a short period, the great human diaspora would occur, resulting in humanity leaving the borders of the Harvana Empire and establishing the Cooperative, the Melkai Syndicate, Brass Corporate, and the Alcotany Empire. And this marks the end of humanity's childhood and the beginning of its adulthood, as they would go on to explore the rest of the galaxy and meet their first aliens, leaving them to form lots of lasting relationships and learn more about, in fact, the quantum bunker, who created it, as well as other mysteries that occurred within their history. Stay tuned for the Six Forces Part 4, The Great Human Diaspora.